pleasure. What a wonderful group. Thank you all very much for being here and welcome. I would like to start, if I may, by thanking those people. Can you hear me all right? No. Any better now? Yes. I want to start by thanking a few people without whom this event would not have happened, without the vibration. I'm thinking of Bryony and Emma from the CPS. I'm thinking of, to them, I'm thinking of Tim Duffy. We could lose this baffling sound, if possible, on the microphone. That would be great. I want to thank Tim Duffy, who is the Saatchi CEO in the... I want to thank Tim Duffy, who is the Saatchi CEO in the UK, for giving us the building, and Monique Henry, who, as those of you who know her know, is the real CEO. I also want to say a word about Tim Knox, who retired as the director of the CPS earlier this year, and he's been a wonderful part of the CPS for many years until his retirement. I'm going to say some more about that in a second. I also want to particularly thank, can you hear me all right, or is this baffling, this noise? It's okay. It's okay, good. I want to thank Sir Nicholas Soames for his... I want to thank Sir Nicholas Soames for his remarkable, inspirational encouragement for this evening. And I'll show you how that goes. Good morning, Morris. I'm surprised to find you awake. I thought all of you around at the CPS were fast asleep. Don't you realise you've got a job to do here? It's up to you, it's your duty. What you have to do is get on with it. Bang! Phone down. That was Nicholas's encouragement to get on with it, which I hope Nicholas will agree we certainly have. And it's wonderful that you're all here. Here's the plan. I am going to attempt in 2 minutes to give a context to this evening. I'm going to then introduce our guest of honour. After that, Graham Brady, Deputy Chairman of the CPS, and as you know, Chairman of the 22, and in that capacity a man who's the slightest twitter of his eyebrows is enough to cause terror to Prime Ministers. And Graham has an important letter which he has received in the last few days, which I'm hoping he's going to share with us. After Graham, you're going to hear from Rob Colvile, and I'm going to announce right now that at a board meeting earlier today, the board of the CPS appointed Robert Colvile, who has been the acting director until today, as the new director of the CPS. After Rob will tell us what all this is about. It's his mastermind all this, and he'll tell us what it's all about. After that, we're going to hear finally from Ben Elliot. Ben Elliot is the newest director of the Centre for Policy Studies, and you will all know him as the most handsome, charismatic, articulate, charming, brilliant young businessman in the country. But not so well known to you will be that he's also a renowned gospel scholar, and he will point out to us that the story of the Good Samaritan shows that first you have to have the money in order to do the good works. That's the order of the evening, and I will in a minute introduce our guest of honor. I did want to set this into a context, if you will allow me. As the Queen was only saying to me at tea the other day, I hate name droppers. But as this is an occasion of such great national, international importance, I'm going to do it anyway. Dr. Henry Kissinger opened the Margaret Thatcher Conference on Security at the Guildhall earlier this year. Many of you were there. I had the opportunity to describe this evening exactly as we are now to Henry Kissinger, and to say to him, if there was to be an objection to this, Henry, which might come from some people, some conservatives, who might say, what is all this? Intellectuals, thinkers, we don't need that. That's just a lot of hot air. Pie in the sky, dream policies. We don't need all that. What we need to do is just have the job in hand in front of us and just get on with the job that's in front of us at the time. if I was to say to you that that was an objection to all this, what would you say? He thought about that, and his answer was, I would sharply disagree. And I sharply disagree, and the CPS sharply disagrees. So I was going to, in taking advice on what would happen this evening, I asked if one could follow Mrs. May, who said, you will recall, on the steps of Number 10 when she became Prime Minister, that she was going to fight inequality, injustice and unfairness. It's a wonderful speech. I said, well, we'll make that the theme for all this new generation. The answer, no. Don't say that. Why? Don't mention those words. Inequality, injustice, unfairness. Don't mention those words. They're Labour words. They're not Tory words. I said, fine, okay, well, if I can't follow Mrs. May, perhaps I can follow Mrs. Thatcher. She said, as we all know, if you want a bigger slice of cake, the best thing to do is bake a bigger cake. Then everyone gets a bigger slice. I said, fine, well, we'll make that the theme then. How's that? No. Don't mention the cake. Why? Because not everyone thinks they're getting a slice. Don't mention the cake. Right. So at that point I said, well, what exactly do you want us to say then? To which the answer was, that's your problem. You can't be expected to do everything. So we've gone down this track, and here we all are, and you will all know international rescue from the Thunderbirds. Well, this is going to be intellectual rescue from the CPS. I'm now going to introduce our guest of honour. And I'm going to introduce her. If one could possibly cut off the baffles, that would be really great. I'm going to introduce her like this. I'm going to read out 5 names, and then you're going to tell me what the connection is. These are the names. Palmerston, Asquith, May, Callaghan, Churchill.
All Home Secretaries.
Give the man a glass. These are the Home Secretaries who became Prime Minister. So, may I present the Home Secretary?
Well, it's a huge pleasure to be here speaking to you all under this banner of the new generation. As somebody who only joined Parliament 7 years ago, I remember being the new generation quite wistfully. I remember that feeling of the journalists calling you up at odd hours of the day, asking you to defend some piece of government policy you're not being entirely sure of. I remember one occasion, particularly quite late at night, getting a call from Newsnight asking me to come and speak on something. And I took pity on the poor young man who'd been asked to do this. And I said to him, listen, if you get to the end of your list and you can't find anybody, come back to me. And he said, you are at the end of the list. He doesn't say that anymore. So it's great for the journalists from Newsnight and from other places that there are 2 new intakes basically this year who can be the enthusiastic ones to kind of go on and respond and try and spin their way through some of the government policy. But I look around and see them and think that we are all very, very lucky because they are, as we know, fizzing with ideas, good thoughts, innovation, and the more of that, the better. It's great to be here in the CPS, under the CPS banner, and we remember it when Margaret Thatcher and Keith Joseph, over a decade, completely changed British politics, completely changed the values and the way people thought about the private sector. You know, I remember my father, who set up a business, saying to me that if you wanted to get a telephone line in your business, it could take months, it could take years. Those were extraordinary days then. If you wanted a sandwich on British Rail, you had to be pretty hungry. If you were going on holiday, you had to, you booked it through the FCO rather than through Thomas Cook or Booking.com. Those were such different days. And Most of us, until very recently, thought that those days had gone for good. I remember a few years ago explaining, as one often is as an MP, to schools and universities what the difference is between Conservatives and Labour, and they struggled with the distinction. And that has all changed now. That has all changed. We now have a situation where Labour is making entirely different choices. Who'd have thought that they would prefer Hugo Chavez and the terrible economic responses that we get from there? And in my own brief, where I thought that the arguments on security, on policing, had been won, who'd have thought that we'd have a situation where leaders of the Labour Party and their front bench have called for the disbandment of MI5, the end of the policing, and complete cuts to police funding. So we need to make that case again. We, you, the other Conservative MPs who've recently joined, we need to go out there and have that fight, because right behind us is Labour, who are going to try and corrupt and make sure that other people don't understand the things that we stand for. We stand for free enterprise and aspiration, for law and order, and for the basic ingredients that make us a safe and prosperous nation. And to all of you here, the next generation, you're going to be crucial in making that happen, as is the CPS. Because the CPS makes the intellectual case, which I think is so important for these changes that we need to hold on to. And recently, they've made them for the case for cuts to corporation tax, for reforming the planning system. And of course, it was Morris, who I think in 2001 was the first Conservative for call for the raising of the personal tax allowance. And we have delivered on so many of those calls. Our corporation tax cuts have seen record levels of employment following the largest and deepest recession since the Second World War. And the increase to the personal allowance, which I really think is something we should be prouder and louder about, has given a tax cut to 30 million people and taken 3 million of the lowest paid out of tax altogether. But Theresa May has rightly been clear that we need to do more, particularly on housing. We need to have a system to boost more ownership and to make sure that everybody has a stake in the market on economy. And we need to adapt our ideas and our reality to the changing context. We can continue with the principles and ideas that make us Conservatives, but we need to change them to fit the modern challenges that we face. Whether in my case, in the Home Office, that's about building a new immigration system, one that when we leave the European Union addresses, frankly and fairly, the public concerns, but also supports the economy and ensures that we remain a global hub for the talent that our businesses need and our economy will thrive on. Whether it's about ensuring that we're at the forefront of the technological revolution that is transforming people's lives for the better, but it also ensures these huge and powerful internet companies are taking their responsibilities seriously and not providing a safe space for terrorism or serious crime. Now, the internet is having an extraordinary impact on our lives in so many different ways. And this is an industry that's only been around for the past 3 decades. And in my opinion, honestly, many governments are struggling for the best way to deal with them, to tax them, to regulate them, to engage with them. I've just returned from Washington, where the talk was so much about Russian interference of the elections through social media. But there were also some extraordinary technological advances where we were able to get involved and really assist in. For instance, we know that crime has moved so much onto the internet. You are 20 times more likely to be a victim of crime online than offline. And there's so much we can do working together internationally to try and change that, to try and make sure that we have the right sort of regulation that secures the freedom of speech and the independence that people rightly want on the internet, but also provides the restrictions that we expect to take place. And just one example where the UK has been leading, we called for the setting up of the first ever global internet forum for counterterrorism. We did that at the start of this year because of the terrible year that we've had in terrorism. And in August this year, I went out to Silicon Valley, and the American acting Homeland Security Minister joined me, and it was set up, and it's a start. It's not the whole answer, but the UK is able to provide this leadership, and we need to do it in partnership with the Americans, because the companies are actually based there. And in that visit to Washington, I was struck again by the extraordinarily close partnership we have with the Americans. And they would volunteer it to me, from the security services to the police to the counter-terrorism groups. They would say to us, it is the UK that we trust most and that we want to work with. So in terms of what we can do, in terms of good ideas to try and keep people safe, working with other companies in other countries is something that I think we should seize on much more as we leave the European Union. Just one example I would give you that we were at the launch of is one of the areas that the internet has become most pernicious in is child sexual exploitation. And we have come together with the Canadians and the Americans to support and invest in a new project called Project Arachnid, where this new online capability of going through the internet, crawling through different sites to actually take down child internet porn at a far faster rate than's ever been done before. Staying ahead, responding to the context we're in, with advances, with investment, with collaboration, is what we will be able to do. So I would like to take the opportunity here to welcome the initiative from the CPS, to welcome the start of something really extraordinary, of working with the 2015 group to ensure, 2017 group, so that they can ensure that they have their voices heard. Because I talk, when we engage in our dining clubs or our conversations with them, a lot of them do say, how do we get our voices heard? We have good ideas. We want to be part of finding the solutions. And to them I say, it is fantastic that you want to do that. The CPS is providing a platform. There are others out there as well, but get your voices out, get heard, because only with your help we'll be able to make the changes that we all believe in. Thank you.
I'm looking for Graham Brady.
He's up here.
Graham. Graham, come on up.
Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, wonderful to see so many people here this evening. I hope there are many people here who are going to be brilliant Conservative MPs in the future. But first, just a parish notice for any current colleagues, which is to say the pairing whip told me he was very happy for you to stay here until 7:45, as long as you leave around about then. But you might think, and one or two colleagues, Amber included perhaps, wonderful to have had you here at this event, Amber, have said, it's wonderful, isn't it, having all these great, brilliant new people in 2015, 2017. What about the rest of us? Well, I can assure you, and I know the Home Secretary would agree, we have good people who came in before 2015 and 2017 as well. But the real purpose of this is not just to highlight the brilliance of the 2015, 2017 Conservative MPs who come into Parliament. It's really to project a very simple message, which is this is now so important, not just for the Conservative Party, but for our country, that this is a job not just for those who happen to be in Parliament at the moment, it's a job for all of us to make sure that we win this battle of ideas and that we make sure that our country remains safe and prosperous and the great country that it can be. But I also just wanted, and Maurice referred to this, to read a couple of lines from a letter that I was very pleased to receive from the Prime Minister, who can't be with us this evening due to a long-standing prior engagement, which said, "I'm delighted to express my support for the New Generation project and to wish you well as you launch it. It was thanks to the pioneering work of the CPS that the Conservative Party successfully made the case for free markets and won the battle of ideas in the 70s and 80s. Today we must win that argument again for a new generation. Defend free and open markets and the values of freedom, equality, rights, responsibilities and the rule of law that lie at their heart. As we fight this new battle of ideas, I want to make the most of all of the talent in the Conservative Party, to encourage fresh thinking and show that we are working together to build an open, global, self-confident United Kingdom. I'm delighted that our brilliant 2015 and 2017 intakes will be at the heart of the New Generation project, and I look forward to hearing the ideas that they put forward. Delighted to have Teresa's support, but so important to have the support of all of you. And we look forward to working together as we make this New Generation project a great success for the Conservative Party, but also, more importantly, for our country. Thank you.
And here's Robert Colvile.
The CPS is now so New Generation we have arranged for beatboxing during our There's a famous saying, and during mine, there's a famous saying quoted by Walter Bagehot that the cure for the House of Lords is to go and admire it. I was a great admirer of the Conservative intake of 2015 and 2017, and then I went to go and look at them. And the truth is, I am even more of an admirer now. The cure for any cynicism about politics is to sit in Portcullis House over endless cups of tea with MPs, young Conservative MPs, and ask them a very simple question. What are you most passionate about? If you could write a paragraph of the next Conservative manifesto, what would it say? And basically, why are you in this? What are you in this for? And the answer, for all of them, the answers varied. Some people said it was about pensions, some people said it was about prisons, some said taxes, some said technology, hospitals and health, housing came up an awful lot. But everyone is in this for different reasons, but fundamentally they're in it for the same reason, because they want to make this country a better place. So the papers we're publishing, which will start this week in fact, are on very different topics. On Thursday we will have Rishi Sunak writing about how to solve one of the big problems with the British economy, which is that we are very, very good at starting small companies and very, very bad about growing them to a sufficient size. Chris Philp has done a really good paper, which is coming out at the start of December, on the housing crisis and home ownership and the causes and the solutions to that. Beyond that, we have Luke Graham writing on devolution, Maria Caulfield on the NHS, Bima Falami and Nascani are writing in very different ways about prosperity and growth. Alan Mack and Matt Warman and others are talking about technology. Ben Bradley is writing about technology's effects on young people and their mental health. Chris Green's writing on transport in the north. I mean, all these things are on the slideshow that you've seen. Ben Howlett on the genomics revolution, Ranil Jayawardena on regional devolution. These are people who actually have ideas. And what unites these papers is not just that they're applying conservative principles to modern challenges. It is that they come from that place of passion and concern. And they also come from a place of genuine expertise. I mentioned Maria Caulfield. She is not just a former NHS nurse. She still does shifts in the NHS. Johnny Mercer is not just someone who cares about veterans. He is a former veteran himself. Chris Philp is not someone who wants to build houses. He is someone who has built houses. Suella Fernandez isn't just writing about education policy. She is someone who has set up a free school. And so the names that you've seen on the screens around the room is only the start of it. There are genuinely dozens more people who want to get involved in this project. In every single case, in talking to every single one of them, I left that conversation more optimistic than I was before about our country. So we've got a few minutes left before the coach sort of turns into a pumpkin and our MPs have to dash back to Parliament. So please, if you see them in the crowd, talk to them about their ideas, talk to them about how you can help make the Conservative Party and the country a better place. Because New Generation, this isn't just a project we're launching, it's what we want to make the CPS about. And it's not just about MPs, it's about anyone who has good ideas for helping to take the country forward. As has been mentioned, Labour are the party of very old ideas and very bad ideas. We want to be the party of very new ideas and very good ones. Thank you very much.
Calling up Ben Elliot. And here he is.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Morris, it's brilliant that you said that we can lock the doors because I'm asking for your money. You've heard about what Robert and the New Generation are going to try and do and why the Centre for Policy Studies, more than ever, and the work they do is so important. We want to ensure that these members of Parliament get the ideas get the audience they deserve. This isn't just about publishing papers, but events, debates, videos and graphics, making sure that people interested in politics at any level have no choice but to sit up and take notice. But they need ammunition to take the fight to the Corbynites, to pay for this research and the personnel and publications that can shape the public debate, that make the case, the very simple case, for conservative ideas and principles. There are all kinds of ways that we can help, all of us. And if you've been inspired at all by what has been said tonight, then you need to be part of it. You need to lean in and get on with this. And the work that Robert and his team and the MPs want to do around housing, skills, technology and enterprise, then we'd love to hear from each and every one of you. It's an awesome threat now. And for all of us, all good men and women, it's time to get your wallets out. It's a critical time for this country and for politics. And if you're in any position to help, then you've got to. And as Mrs. Thatcher most famously said, pennies do not fall from heaven. So we'll lock the doors and get on with it. But have a very good evening. Thank you.